Bueno, le damos la bienvenida a todas las personas que se empiezan a unir a nuestro webinar informativo el día de hoy con University of Notre Dame du Lac, ubicada en los Estados Unidos. Este es un espacio sin duda fundamental para todos ustedes si su proyecto académico y profesional está guiado y orientado en realizar un posgrado en este país y en esta institución académica. Mi nombre es Karen Martínez, yo soy asistente del área de Consejería Académica y Relaciones Internacionales en Colfuturo y me encuentro en esta ocasión con Elizabeth Wood. Ella es representante de esta institución académica y nos va a compartir información muy valiosa sobre todas las opciones de financiación, oferta académica, opciones de hospedaje también y recomendaciones para todos en general. Adicionalmente, y claramente en el marco de estos webinars informativos que estamos realizando en este segundo semestre, que pues particularmente se llevan a cabo con universidades con las que Colfuturo tiene convenio, el acuerdo que tenemos establecido con la Universidad de Notre Dame du Lac consta de dos becas del 50% para beneficiarios en el Master in Global Health Program y también es muy importante aclarar que quienes no reciban esta beca del 50% igualmente van a tener acceso a una del 35%. Así que es muy importante que realmente solucionemos todas las inquietudes y todas las dudas que tengamos al respecto en este espacio. Tenemos la oportunidad de conversar en este caso con Elizabeth, quien nos va a orientar de la forma más adecuada y pertinente. Así que aprovechemos totalmente su experticia y los invitamos a todos igualmente a que se sigan registrando todos los eventos que tenemos establecidos para este mes, tanto con universidades estadounidenses como también aquellos webinars que son preparatorios de cara a nuestra próxima convocatoria en el 2025. Así que sin más preámbulos, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today. We are so happy to have you here with us and to listen all the valuable information that you have. So you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so today I'll be talking about the Masters of Science in Global Health program and just a few things about myself. I am the Masters of Science in Global Health program director. I work directly with every student in our program. I serve as the academic advisor. I also have over a decade of international work experience where I conduct research related to nutrition, community-based participatory research, gender dynamics, and maternal, newborn, and child health work. I also work in research within academia. So I work in, I conduct virtual exchanges, I develop curriculum, and I also, like just recently in a course, we used virtual reality of a setting in Ethiopia to learn, to help us with a case study in the course. I'm an associate professor, so I teach a lot of the courses in the program, and I do a lot of my work with Kim. Kim is the MSGH coordinator, so should any of you have any questions, I am always available, but Kim is also extremely helpful. She's been working with the program since it began over 10 years ago. I also like to highlight a few of our faculty to emphasize how this program within the University of Notre Dame, it sits within the Eck Institute for Global Health. And so it's not in a college or a school because we get faculty from all over campus to teach our programs or to teach our courses. So we have instructors from applied mathematics and statistics. We have instructors from biological sciences, as well as the School for Global Affairs. To talk a little bit about the structure of the MSGH, it is a 2-year program. We are an in-person, face-to-face program. We require 42 total credits. And then beneath that, you can see we have 29 required courses. We have 8 to 9 concentration electives, and we have 3 to 4 general electives, which can be taken anywhere in the university. Our 3 concentrations are vector biology and parasitology. We have a lot of faculty at Notre Dame that work in malaria, schistosomiasis, as well as other types of vector-borne diseases. Health policy and governance. Again, we work closely with our Keough School for Global Affairs. And then finally, health analytics, because we have a strong data science component at Notre Dame as well. We also require a capstone field research. That's done between year 1 and year 2. I'll show you in just a second what that looks like. But the capstone is, because this is a Masters of Science program, we require a capstone from every student. And I'll talk about that as well. So this is what the program looks like each semester. In semesters 1 and 2, it's a lot of core courses. These are all of the core courses. It ranges between 12 and 15 credits. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that students have a foundation in global health and global health knowledge and skills before they conduct their capstone fieldwork during that summer semester. Then in year 2 is when I recommend a lot of students take electives, because you have your data at that point from your research, you're analyzing your data in the capstone course, and then you're writing it all up. But it also allows students a lot more flexibility for different concentrations across the university. So again, I try to emphasize concentrations in the second year, but students are always welcome to take electives in the first year. Going through our concentrations, these are just some of the courses that we allow under each concentration. Health analytics, it ranges from things like learning GIS, geographic information systems, to data science. In health governance and policy, we have a lot of students take the climate change courses, environmental policy courses, and then in vector biology and parasitology, molecular epidemiology is very popular, as is water disease and global health. But again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just meant to be an example of courses that can be used within each concentration. And I'm going to go back to this slide, because one thing that we emphasize in our course, or in our program, is that students take the first semester, so this one right over here, to get a few courses under your belt so that you don't have to declare a concentration when you apply to the MSGH program. So a lot of programs like Masters in Public Health, you have to, declare epidemiology or biostatistics or community health or whatever the concentration may be. In our program, we do not require that. When you apply to the master's program, and that's it. You do not have to declare a concentration. I don't talk to students as the academic advisor until about concentrations until their second semester. So around right in here. I talk to students probably in around March, because that's when registration for fall opens. And that's when I start to, help them flesh out what concentration they're most interested in based on the courses they've taken so far, based on their capstone project, what is the best fit. So I think that makes us a little bit more unique, because I think I have a master's in public health, and when I applied, you had to declare a concentration. And you may not know what you want to do, because the field may be totally new to you. So you do not have to do that for this application. But getting into the capstone is something that happens from probably July, before students that get accepted into the program actually get to Notre Dame. We start to send out information around different labs across campus that are available, different researchers across campus that have capacity in their labs. And again, it can range. I'll show you on the next page the type of projects students have had, but we send out that information, and then students rank which researcher they would prefer to work with. Sometimes it's not always their first choice, but we try to match it as close as possible to the people that they want to work with. So when you get into the program, you start your first semester in, taking those core courses, but also a capstone course. That's where you start to identify your project. You write an annotated bibliography, you write a literature review, you do a lot of writing, because you're trying to become a subject matter expert in whatever it is you're working with, whether it's like breast cancer diagnosis, or malaria in the highlands of Ethiopia, or just, there's so many different types of projects, but you have to start getting familiar with the literature. Within that same semester, you're going to identify a capstone supervisor. That's that researcher I was talking about that you want to work with. And then once you have the capstone supervisor, you start to form a committee. By the end of the semester, your deliverable for that course, your main project, is to present sort of an outline of what you think you want to do to your committee. And then they provide you feedback, and then you have your next capstone course in spring. That's with me. I teach the methods course. It's where you, and that's right here, where you finalize methods and data plan. So you submit to any sort of IRB, institutional review board, ethical review board. If you're doing international work, we have students work here domestically in the United States. We also have students work internationally. I would say by and large, most students travel internationally. And so there's almost always another IRB that has to get submitted. And so we get all of the ethical approval in that spring semester. We create a timeline and budget. The program pays for every capstone fieldwork. So if you're going to, we have a student that's working in Mexico this upcoming summer. So he's going to have to flesh out everything from room and board to per diem, or the cost of food each day, to any sort of supplies that he may need, transportation, the cost of the flight, everything. You have to put everything into that budget. Once it gets approved by me as the director, then we purchase your tickets. So that's mainly what you do in your second semester with your capstone. And then you go do it. In the summer, students spend around 8 to 12 weeks collecting data. And how long you stay in the field is determined by your budget. So, and then also your timeline. Certain research projects don't require 12 weeks to be in the field. So most of our students, I would say it's usually around 6 to 8, but every now and then we have students stay closer to 10 to 12. So once your summer data is collected, you finalize it, you analyze it within your fall semester, and you're going to update your paper. It's going to transform from like a proposal to an actual capstone paper. And we always encourage our students to choose a research journal to submit to if that's what the committee wants to do. I don't require it, but I very much recommend that you start turning your capstone paper into a manuscript, because we want our students to disseminate their findings, which again is something you do in your final semester. That final semester, you finalize your results and you are just presenting everything you've done. We have a colloquium on campus where students present. We have different conferences where students have presented. But we try to get information out there so that at the very end of this program, usually in April of your second year, is when your committee comes together and you have to present your defense. You have to present your entire capstone project, and it's open, so anybody can come to it. Then everybody leaves and your committee discusses your work. And that's what determines your presentation, and your final paper determine whether or not you graduate. So that's why we don't hold your hand through the entire process, but we guide you and we advise you so that you have the mentorship needed to conduct ethical, meaningful work internationally or domestically in the United States. So that's what the capstone looks like, the methods for it, the process for it. To give you some examples of different researchers. So we have researchers like Dr. Smith-Oka on the left. She's an anthropologist. She's worked with obstetric violence in various countries, like again, Mexico, Kenya, and so there's some other countries she's worked with. Dr. Miller-Graff she's a psychologist. She's worked in violence, trauma, resilience-based interventions internationally. Dr. Joyce Adams works in maternal, newborn, and child health. She works here domestically. She also works in Ghana. Dr. Ellis Adams works in water, sanitation, and hygiene. He's worked in Malawi, Ghana, as well as here domestically. And again, the list goes on. We have an epidemiologist. We have a global health economist. We have people that cover the span of global health work, from your basic sciences like microbiology, parasitology, to the other end of the spectrum where you're working more with policy and governance. So our students do a whole breadth, a whole spectrum of different types of projects. So I always advise that they never compare themselves to each other, because everybody's is going to look different. Every project is going to look very different. And here are some examples of that. So on the left is a student who worked, I want to say either last summer or the summer before, in Uganda. She was working with palliative care workers and gender-based violence. In the middle, a student was working with facilitators and barriers to breastfeeding in Ghana. And then on the right, we have a student that was working in Ethiopia with different types of malaria diagnostic tests. So we have very, very different types of projects. Some are done qualitatively, quantitatively, again, using tools in basic science. Like the student on the right, I know he was doing like PCR for probably 700 blood samples, in addition to other types of projects. So everybody's projects look so different. And to give you some examples, the student on the left, in terms of career trajectory, the student on the left went on to do a master's in social work as well, and now she's working as a social worker in Chicago. The student in the middle has been working within a fellowship at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta. And the student on the right just entered this fall our PhD program in biological sciences here at Notre Dame. So getting into the admissions part of this presentation, we have some requirements set by our graduate school, which include a bachelor's degree from an accredited university or college. Other than that, we do require that you have a 3.0 GPA or above. That's set by the graduate school as well. And that's a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale. So if you're at a university that uses a 5.0 scale or it's out of like 100, I've seen various types of different scales. It has to be converted, and we can do the conversion. I just have to know the legend. Like, what does very good or excellent, what does that look like? So that's what I mean when I say legend. What is an A? What is a B? Is that a 4.0? Is that a 3.0? So that's what we need for the application. We do not require GRE. We do not require a WES evaluation, WES. For TOEFL, you can use TOEFL. You can use Duolingo if the TOEFL is not available, but we try to make the application accessible to as many people as we can. So those are the requirements. We recommend at least 2 upper level science courses. It's a recommendation, especially if you're going more towards parasitology and virology. Students that have never had a background in that may struggle if that's the concentration they go to. But if you're more interested in policy, for example, you don't need 2 upper level science courses. We highly recommend a statistics course. We have several quantitative courses in this program. We have biostatistics, epidemiology, quantitative methods too. And then if you go on to any sort of electives that require statistics, it can be challenging without having a background in it. So just any statistics course is highly recommended. So those are the recommendations and the requirements for the degree or for the application. Some other things that are required for us as a program and not the university: we require a curriculum vitae or a resume. We require a statement of purpose where you outline why do you want to come to the MSGH program, how do you think you'll benefit from it. 3 letters of recommendation. It can be a mix. It can be employers, it can be supervisors, it can be professors or advisors. It doesn't just have to be professors. And then an official or unofficial transcript for the application. You don't have to have an official transcript yet. If you get accepted to the program, between your acceptance and your first semester, the end of your first semester, the graduate school will require your official transcript. So Kim, that person I was talking about earlier, the coordinator, she makes sure that if you submitted an unofficial transcript in your application, that you absolutely require, or we require, an official transcript at some point in your first semester of the program. Here's our website. And then I also want to go through just a few of the application deadlines and funding. For US applicants, the deadline is March 31st. For international applicants, it's January 1st, not July, January 1st. And the reason for that is we have a lot of students that struggle with visas. And it's not necessarily students that are getting denied visas. That's probably 50% of the time. The other 50% of the time is getting appointments for visas. So that's why we are encouraged to have an earlier deadline for international students, is just to ensure that we get visas. As far as funding goes, there's nothing you have to do to be considered for funding from us. You just apply. When we review applications, the admissions committee goes through and we look at merit-based as well as other types of metrics for what type of scholarships that we're going to give out that year. And it varies based on year because we have different funding each year. And so with COLFUTURO, we offer two 50% scholarships, and that's for the full 2 years. So it's a 50% scholarship per year. It's not a 50% scholarship and then next year, this year 2, you're on your own. It's 2 years of a 50% scholarship. And that's for 2 people. And then everyone else is at least 35%. And that's through COLFUTURO. But again, those are just the minimums. If we have the funding, then we will always try to support, especially international students, with a higher scholarship, because we understand there's so many barriers to getting funding for international students for tuition. So those are just the lower ends, 50% scholarships and 35% scholarships. And our tuition ranges, it changes every year. But for example, right now it's around $65,000 US per year. So a 50% scholarship route would obviously reduce that. And then we also encourage applicants to apply sooner so that we can, we review them all at the same time. But I think the sooner you apply, the less issues you can have. And then the final thing that I want to go over is what it looks like to live here. We are in South Bend, Indiana. It's the Midwest of the United States. So the cost of living here is a bit lower than in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., in Miami, Florida. It's a lot less expensive, but the downside to that is we don't have a lot of public transportation here. So we encourage our students to live either on campus in graduate housing or near campus. The good thing too is that the way University of Notre Dame is built is there's a lot of housing near campus. So we highly encourage students to live nearby, if not on campus. But if you factor in for fall 2024, tuition is roughly $65,000. There's random fees that can be attributed to your program, things like housing and food, books and supplies, other expenses that you may acquire, and then transportation. It averages at around $90,000 per year. And so we try to offset that cost as much as we can in however ways we can. So I highly encourage people to compare that across different programs in the United States because it can be quite expensive here in the US. One of the things I like about living here is that the cost of living is lower, so it's more affordable. But I'm a train ride. We have a train here that takes us to Chicago. We're near Indianapolis, we're near Michigan. I personally live within walking distance of the Michigan border. So we're near bigger cities, but we don't have to pay those prices. So that's what it looks like to live here in Indiana, or at least South Bend, Indiana. Okay, so I will open it up to questions. And I will also put this on the screen so that you have my information, but you also have Kim's information. All right, thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much to you for all this valuable information and for this excellent presentation. So yes, we have some questions for you. And the first question is about the letter of recommendation that you mentioned that it's required in the admission process. So it's better from, the letter of recommendation is better from work or from study?
Either. We have students that have been out of school for 10 years. So, they may not have a professor or, somebody from study that they can refer to. So their letters of recommendation may be all from supervisors from work.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you. We have another question. If I have a specialization from Colombian institution, could this give me more chances to be admitted? Maybe this person could have an advantage.
I would say we try to look at everyone holistically. So what that means is we try not to give anybody an advantage because we get over 500 applications. And we are cohort size, so the number of students that actually enter our program are around 10 to 15. So we have over 500 applications. We admit probably 20 to 25, and then probably 10 to 15 come to the University of Notre Dame. So it's very important for us that we try to be equitable, but that's not to say I don't think it's necessarily a Colombian university that's going to make you look competitive. It's your application. So show me why it's competitive, and then it will be.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Well, we have a question from Luisa, and she's asking, she says, could you please remind us which is the level of English needed?
That's a good question. I actually don't know. That's never come up before in our application. So let me find out. That's a really good question. I've never denied someone based off of their English proficiency. Let me put it that way.
Okay, don't worry. Well, that question is about our agreement and the terms and conditions. So how do you define the two people that will receive the 15% of discount? And what information do you have taken into account? Maybe the GPA or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So we really do try to fill those positions with COLFUTURO. So if I'm reviewing a Colombian candidate, I'm going to look at GPA. So when I say holistic, I'm looking at GPA. I'm looking at the overall transcript, because your transcripts tell a story. If you're a pre-med student and you're not doing so well in those pre-med courses, but maybe in your final year of your bachelor's degree, you took a bunch of courses on anthropology or something and did really well, that tells me that maybe you shouldn't be a physician. But, so I try not to judge students based on a few courses. In other words, so if you did poorly in, say, biochemistry, I'm not going to hold that against you. So in other words, we look at transcripts. I do consider the GPA, but I prefer to look at transcripts. We also look at I'm a qualitative researcher, so I look a lot at your essay. I want to know why you want to be in this program. And that's largely because I want to make sure that it's a good fit. Because if you're coming here and you're talking so much about data science and not about global health, then I might recommend a master's of science in data science rather than a master's of science in global health. So we consider that. And then we do look at things like recommendation letters. We look to see what people are saying about you. And so it matters who you choose. I'm not joking. I have had recommendation letters where people have not said good things, or the recommendation letter was only 2 or 3 sentences. That tells me that that person didn't have a lot to say, either because they didn't know the applicant very well, or the applicant wasn't a good candidate. So I would say try to make your application, every aspect of it, as strong as possible.
That's perfect. Thank you. Well, the last question that we have for you is, it could be possible have a job meanwhile I am studying, and in what typically areas students work?
So a job during the program? Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of our students do that for various reasons. The university allows graduate students to work up to 20 hours per week. So part-time, students can work part-time. We have some students that work as graduate researchers or graduate assistants, research assistants in different labs across campus. We've had students, like I said at the beginning, we're a program that sits in the Institute for Global Health. And within the Institute, we have 2 student workers, and they're always international students from the MSGH program, because I make sure of that. I push the Institute to hire international students specifically because I know it's difficult. So yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have students that work all across campus, either in office-related jobs, in research-related jobs, or within our own institute. So we absolutely allow that.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. We solved all the questions that we had in this session. So Elizabeth, thank you again for all the information that is so useful for all of us. I know that all of our attendees are already clear about the information that you give us. So we really hope to keep in conversations with you to have this kind of opportunities in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Y a todos nuestros asistentes, muchas gracias también por su participación e interés en estos webinars informativos. Los invitamos a estar muy pendientes de nuestra página web para que puedan registrarse a otros espacios. Hasta luego. Goodbye, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Bye.